Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Delighted today to be joined by Anne Mazinga, who is the co-founder of OmniTalk and hosts the OmniTalk podcast. Hi, Anne. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Simon. Thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. No, really appreciate you coming on. And that's not a British accent. So for our regular listeners, tell us where you are in the world.
I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So just, north of the northernmost part of the states that you can get. And yeah, home to some of the bigger retailers, Target, Best Buy, and others.
Awesome. Well, brilliant. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And we're going to talk today around kind of this drive to touchless retail. And what I mean by that is stores with maybe no cashiers or seemingly no colleagues in. And of course, we'll start with the Amazon Go or Amazon Fresh, as it's called in the UK model. But before we get into the detail, let's find out a bit more about you, Anne. So tell us about your career, what you've done and how you've got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, Target Corporation is based here, and that was my first retail job. Prior to that, I actually worked in broadcast news in Minneapolis and in New York. But when I worked at Target, my co-founder of OmniTalk, Chris Walton, and we were tasked with a job to create this Target store of the future. So a lot of the things that you called out earlier, Simon, checkout free technology, just thinking about how the store is going to evolve, in the next few years was really top of mind for us in our career at Target. And then in OmniTalk, we really sought to continue that research, that, deep dive into how people's habits were going to be changing. And, then the pandemic hit this last year, and we've had that accelerate even more quickly than we could have anticipated, which is really exciting for us. And we talk about that in our writing on omnitalk.blog and then on our OmniTalk podcast, where each week we focus on the top 5 things that happened in retail for the week.
Amazing. And we'll put some links into the show notes for the podcast and the blog. And for those that don't know who Target are, if they've maybe not been to Canada or the States, they're one of the 5th, 6th biggest, largest retailers in America?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So big box retailer, really starting to expand into the grocery space, really becoming that one-stop shop. And again, like very akin to Walmart. It's probably one of their biggest competitors next to Amazon, but, offering, groceries, essentials, home goods, now beauty. They just partnered with Ulta to create shop in shops, and Disney. So they've got toys, they've got all of it in one stop shop.
Amazing. Good. So let's flip that on its head then. So most retailers looking to not move out necessarily a physical space, but probably consolidate their physical space and drive more online. And certainly the pandemic has driven online naturally because none of us in the world could get out. Amazon may be going the other way. So they bought Whole Foods, 4 or 5 years ago now?
Right.
Bigger presence clearly in your part of the world than the UK. I think we've got 3, 4 over here. But we've now started to see these Amazon Go or Amazon Fresh, depending on where you are in the world, shops pop up. So I think we've got 5 or 6 in London now. I'm not sure how many you've got over there in the States.
But well, you guys are lucky. We have there are only a few in the States right now, and we still don't have any close to us. So yeah, I'm anxious to hear from your trip, Simon, because like I said, we still are waiting for them to expand. Although I think that's going to happen pretty quickly.
Okay, so let me tell you about my trip to what is Amazon Fresh. And my first mistake was downloading the Amazon Go app before I went, because that's the American app. So I was in London last week at the time of recording, and I went to the one in Canary Wharf with my son and one of his friends, because they couldn't quite believe that you could walk into a shop, pick something up and walk out and nobody would stop you.
Right.
So yeah, pretty cool. I mean, it's in the business district in London, the one we went to, which is clearly quiet at the time of visit because lots of people still working from home. But actually, yeah, it was really interesting, and I took some photos, and I'll try and put those in the show notes as well. So if I describe the journey, feel free to stop me and quiz me on any of the bits. We went to the shop, and there's a security guard at the front who clearly has become the host, who tells everybody that goes, they've downloaded the wrong app and you need to go to your actual Amazon app, and there's a tab at the top which says Amazon Fresh, which gives you your QR code.
Got it. Very important job, and probably one that, that's one of the things that, even at Target, we learned, like, you don't realize what the roles of people in the store are going to be until people are actually starting to, go in, experience the store. And so you got to be agile. I love that.
Yeah. So he was good and put me on the right path. There's kind of barrier gates at the front, so you have to scan in everybody who's in your party individually. So we scanned the app 3 times. I went in, my son, and then his friend went in. And I assume that then means that it can link back anything you pick up through the cameras that are all in the ceiling back to my account, and therefore my card to charge me. Had a stroll round. Product range as you'd expect from a convenience store, some lunch food to go offerings. Interestingly, quite a big alcohol section, which that's
different than what we've heard, at least from the stores in the States, the Amazon Go stores in the States. How did that work? Did you try purchasing?
Well, and this is where it gets interesting. So maybe this is where the model doesn't quite work, or they've not figured it out yet. So I'm over 18. I won't disclose my full age, but clearly older than 18. And my son and his friend are 16. So we wandered in, and then quickly a member of staff comes along saying, "Oh, we need to see ID from these 2 boys because you only can be over 18 to shop in this section." So instantly they've given themselves a kind of minimum manning requirement, because if you can only allow over 18s in, there's no other barrier to get in. I therefore need to man it. So that was all. We were kind of ushered out in effect, and I could go and have a walk around. But that was interesting from a staffing requirements point of view.
Right. And also interesting that they don't have, I suppose they have that information saved on your profile, but that there wouldn't be some sort of stop at the beginning to screen or check for that. That's...
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe in the future you could pick it up through the cameras as you come in, and there's an automatic gate that does some age recognition profile, and a bit like they do in some of the airport check-ins now. But yeah, so minimum manning requirement there. Then a nice collection point for your Amazon parcels and drop-off, which I thought was quite neat. Mm-hmm. It's middle of the city, so actually I'll go and order my Amazon deliveries there because I don't want it to come to the office, and I'll go drop off my returns there. And actually while I'm there, I'll probably buy something. So I thought that was neat. Big food to go section, so bread, coffee machines, soft drinks, sandwiches, all the bits you'd expect. Two things that caught my eye were three actually, if I think. One, electronic shelf edge labels. We don't really see that much of it over here yet. Cost of ownership still quite high, but implemented, done well, really showed the offers because everything's highlighted in red that's an offer. So I thought that was a good point. In the back of shop that you could see through, I think there was probably about 6 or 7 staff.
Okay.
Which was interesting because, again, size of store, cost model, you think, not sure what they're doing. And then product on shelf, when sold out, there was a kind of gravity-fed backboard that said, "We know it's sold out, coming soon, watch this space," which I've not really seen again over here. I've seen lots of organisations where they'll put we've scanned the stock, we know it's out of stock, kind of tick it in, but this was gravity fed. So when the stock comes in, put it on, push it back, and then it goes to the back until you're out of stock or again. Right. So I thought that was pretty neat. Weirdest bit is, and of course we had to buy something to test it because that's what it's all about.
Right.
We all bought a drink, picked it up, walked out. Security guard said on the way out, you get a receipt to your phone in 15-20 minutes. And guess what? 15-20 minutes. Email, there's your receipt, picture of all the stuff you bought, stock picture and price, charge for it.
So would you go back? That's the big question.
No.
Really?
No.
Why not?
Because it didn't give me anything different than, there was no different product.
Okay.
So frictionless. Yes, in terms of I can put stuff up. And of course, we did the whole put stuff up and put it back somewhere else and all that kind of stuff to try and trick the system, and it knows. So you can't trick the system. But it wasn't for the benefit of just being able to pick stuff up and put it in my hand basket, walk out. There was no different products that made me want to go back to try something different or to experience something different. If I worked there, I'd use it.
Okay.
but from a destination point of view, it's not different enough in product and range. It's just the payment side.
And Simon, was that just an Amazon Go, or was that the Amazon Fresh?
It's called Amazon Fresh over here, but in effect, it's a convenience store.
Okay, so they didn't have like produce. We're not talking grocery concept. This was just as you mentioned, the grab and go convenience kind of SKUs.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point. You know, I think there's this element of fun and mystery. You know, the reasons why your son and his friend probably wanted to go to the store to just check out the technology, and that certainly, you know, may wane as checkout free technology becomes more ubiquitous. And many of the experts in the field feel like this technology will be ubiquitous in the next, 3 years even. So I think it's an important point that you bring up, in that the selection of product really needs to be either convenient. It has to be something unique that you can't get somewhere else. And I think Amazon in this case specifically is really trying to go for the former there, to be hyper convenient and, a store that's really designed for that working, professional who, is looking for that quick grab and go and, maybe going somewhere else, or to, Marks and Spencer's or something on their lunch break now can avoid the line. I think that's the biggest thing during the pandemic that people have not had to encounter again. But once we get back to normal and, you're still experiencing that lunch rush, I think the convenience of what Amazon is providing with the Amazon Fresh concept will really pay off for them and will really be a reason for consumers to go there. If nothing else, for the package pickup and return that you mentioned too. I think as Amazon adds more conveniences, more things that you can accomplish on that quick half-hour lunch run, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see it as a kind of test bed for wider things, but absolutely that maybe coffee and pastry before work on the way, nipping in for some lunch, maybe nipping in to buy some sort of ready meal or ingredients for a meal on the way home.
Yeah.
That whole just walk in, walk out thing, absolutely get it. But for me, I would only do that if it was convenient. I wouldn't take a trip out of my way to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Yeah, I think, and that's still, I think the other thing you pointed out too is in some of those service areas, we work with a company called Trigo that's doing a pilot with Tesco currently. They're about to open another store, and that is a big area where they've been trying to figure out how to still provide convenience when you have, tobacco or alcohol products that require, more involvement, more touch with the consumer. And while Amazon, I think, has a little bit more freedom because they can have 6 people sitting in the back right now, their business model economics are not the same as, say, a Tesco. They have the ability to test and learn, and to have staff in there dedicated who are going up to, your son and saying, you're not old enough to be purchasing this product. But eventually the technology has to get to a point where it's able to understand those kinds of things and still provide the same convenience without there being a human component to that.
Yeah. And I was surprised by the number of colleagues on the floor and in the back. My working assumption was it'd be very, very sparsely staffed. There may be a team that come in at certain points in the day to replenish, and you've got that customer education piece of how do you physically get in, because if you haven't got an Amazon account, clearly there's nowhere to charge, so you can't come in. But for me, it's started me thinking about the bit of the conversation really you were touching on then with Trigo and Tesco's, of how repeatable is this for other retailers? Because it struck me it's not a cheap fit for the store, and clearly there's an investment in technology to do it. You could argue that might be counteracted by not having to invest in physical tills and all the other bits. So there must be a pro and con to all of this. And then what are the limitations of it? So where does it work well, and actually where might people strive to do this that actually you still need? And I'm thinking maybe things like fashion, some consultation on sizing, some consultation in the fitting room, somebody to go and get you some other bits. I don't know if you've had any thoughts around those bits.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you look at Amazon, and one of the big differences when you're a non-Amazon retailer and you're looking at what Amazon's doing in this space. I mean, again, they have the R&D budget to build these stores from scratch. They don't own a bunch of existing real estate right now. They're buying new, and they're able to deploy these stores, just deploy the technology in these stores as a brand new build out. And when you look at, Tesco, you look at especially other retailers in the US, I think, they're looking at a very different situation. And you're absolutely right, Simon. It's not an insignificant investment. It's going to require not only a shift in, total store operations, investment in technology, and investment in those foundational operation systems for a store to run that can, plug into this type of experience. But it also requires, I think, future thinking about the footprint of your store. What's that going to look like? And so like the Tesco example, again, with Trigo, they did a hybrid case. So their first store was, they had the checkout free option on one side, and then they still have regular tills so that people can check out and have the normal grocery experience. I think what we're going to start seeing is retailers starting to test, maybe like, let's take the grab and go section, the lunch section, the deli, the ready-made meals section, maybe some of those convenience items. And I think we'll start to see retailers, convert a portion of their store maybe to this checkout free example. So it might be separated from the larger, 50,000 square foot box. They might have a smaller, 5 to 8,000 square foot footprint where they are just doing grab and go items, so that they're really allowing customers to have two different, trip experiences depending on what their needs are. They might over lunch want to go to the smaller footprint, do the grab and go, and walk out. And then on their way home, maybe they're stopping and doing a fuller, grocery order or, grocery and essentials order. And so I think that we'll start to see these retailers not, piloting the technology. If you're not Amazon, cannot scale right now to a 50,000 square foot box. It's just, there just isn't the computing power to do that yet. So I think we'll start to see retailers reimagining what their store footprints are like to best serve their customers, how they can pay off convenience, and then evaluating the technology there and seeing, what am I really going to invest in? Can I prove out my theory that this is offering my customers, more flexibility, the convenience that they need by doing this, in an adjacent store, or maybe in a high traffic area near, transit hubs or something like that. Just giving them, I think, some ability to rethink what their strategy is as far as their store footprint is for the future.
No, I agree. And I think as you were talking there, a couple of things sprung into my mind. One being concessions must be a really good opportunity. So a store within a store, mm-hmm. And as a brand, I may almost have my food to go as a concession within my own store, so I can ring fence that. And that's the pick it up and walk option and get charged later. The other thing I was thinking is, does it start to play to, certainly in the UK, we've talked about retail experience and experiential retail for years and years, and very, very few have delivered it. Is this the game changer that means I would still have colleagues in store, but they would be there to add value, to serve, to deliver an increase in transaction value or conversion, because they know the payment part has been taken care of? Maybe this is the game changer that frees them up, because they're always, certainly in our world of studying process and efficiencies, putting stock out and mm-hmm. serving on the tills are the two biggest drivers in workload in pretty much every organization we've ever worked with.
Right. And, we talked about earlier some of the things that you noticed with the technology in the Amazon store that I think, like out of stocks being one, being higher touch and helping people get through the store and figure out what app to download, things like that. The whole checkout process in general, those roles are mundane tasks. Those are not the roles where I think you want to apply the people that are representing your brand, that are engaging with your consumers. And so that's where I think, implementing this technology makes sense. If you ask somebody working at, a convenience store or at a grocery store, they likely the engagement with the customer at the checkout, but the actual act of checking out all the items, like that's not something that I think empowers them or brings them joy and allows them to create the best experience for your customers always either. Talking to somebody about a new product, or, helping somebody choose a wine or a beer for an event. Like, those are things that are memorable in the eyes of the consumer. They don't need to be waiting in line after they've had that really great experience with one of your staff, to close off the experience with, I waited in line for 20 minutes and that was awful. Like, I love the store, I love going there, but ultimately, my trip was longer because I had to wait for the people who have 4 cartloads in front of me. I think that it's important to also note that, yes, the experience gets better because, like you said, the shelf sensors are telling people quicker than, in most cases, a human being could get to the back stockroom to find something, or to notify or enter into a product information database that, we're out of this thing, or, the process involved to get to that point can be really lengthy, where when you deploy technology, everything's moving more quickly to really facilitate that store operating more effectively on its own. And again, allowing your personnel, your staff in store to really focus on, jobs that are more engaging for them and that are going to leave a better impression on your customers.
Yeah, and again, it's really interesting. We did, in one of our really early podcasts, we did some customer experience chats with the guys at InMoment, who do lots of the surveys which come through on the end of till receipts and mystery shopping and all those other bits. And one of the overriding things which makes an experience good or bad is your last interaction. And for most people, that's back to your point of queuing in a checkout and having a chat, or not queuing. And that massively, massively skews the figures of whether it was a great experience, memorable, you'd return, to it's transactional and I have to go and I know I'm going to have to queue. So taking that out, again, could transform the consumer's perception of that environment, because maybe the last interaction was with the person who was advising on the beer or the wine or the whiskey. So right. From a consumer psychology point of view, the behaviors change and your last interaction changes.
Right. And you think about, that length of, especially when you're doing like a weekly grocery shopping trip. I mean, if you just think about it, you're only having somebody help you when you need it. If you need somebody to help you bag your groceries at the end, but you don't have to sit in line and wait for each item to be scanned through. I mean, that is just leaving such a great impression. It's providing service for your customers when and where they need it, not, giving your customers more work to do, especially after this new customer behavior where we've adjusted to click and collect and other elements where we're not waiting in line anymore. So as customers are starting to go back to stores, I think their tolerance after, a year plus of not waiting in line for waiting in lines again is going to be much lower. Which, it's hard for the retailers out there because they don't really have a chance then, when they haven't had the opportunity yet to have customers in their store like they did pre-pandemic, and to really, iron out some of these inefficiencies in the process.
And it must give some material gains as well if we end up in a world where this is let's call it the primary point of payment. So if cash reduces, clearly there's less counting of cash, there's less ordering of change, there's less banking in terms of those processes that lots of people that maybe have never worked in retail don't know happens behind the scenes. If you pay by cash, somebody's got to count it, somebody's got to send it off to the banking depot or the security van to pick up to go and be banked and go in that bank account. But also, you may end up in a world where you've got lots of shops in a small area of replen teams that go around to a shop, fill it, move to the next shop, fill it, move to the next shop, fill it, because you've got that economy. Or even they might drive the lorry there with the stock in to fill it. So the possibilities are almost endless. But do you think we'll ever get to a store that will get good customer feedback and be somewhere where you want to visit frequently that has no colleagues? So kind of full automation.
I do. I think that, again, it goes back to the right use cases. I think an airport is a great example. Do you need somebody at the airport to, do you need to be waiting in line when you have a limited supply of goods? You know what you want to get when you go in there. It's much more simple to walk in, swipe your credit card, or scan an app, pick what you want and walk out. I think absolutely there's a case for that. I also think in fast food, Simon, you and I have been talking a little bit about Bite Ninja, where that company that's out of the US who is using remote workers to manage drive-through order intake. And we're even seeing like Taco Bell just released a concept where, they're staffing one part of the kitchen and they have got 4 drive-through lanes. So now like your tacos will be beamed down to you via Bellevator. I think the fast food industry is another place where, do we need human workforce in that space? To the extent that we have them right now, I don't think so. I think that there are ways that it will be simpler and easier and safer for everyone involved when you have those correct scenarios. I do believe, though, that it's still very important for us to have our human workforce involved in post-purchase, in follow-up, especially when we start to get into some of the other sectors, not so much grocery retail or big box retail, but especially when you start to get into things like apparel and, home furnishings, for example. Like, to have somebody from your company who's checking in on people after they've purchased that item from you, who, is sending them, here, we know you purchased this pair of pants. These are tops that go with it. I thought of you because of this. It's really about that post-purchase focus and really putting or even returns is another great example, like with Amazon too. How simple are you making it for me to return that product and exchange it or get a better size? Like, that is really becoming the place where I think I would be allocating the extent of my labor force.
It's that big ticket or emotional purchase. So, something you might not buy, maybe something you buy every 5-10 years, a new bed, a new mattress, a new sofa, a new car. That's probably the areas where there's a plethora of options. So what colour do I want? What interior do I want? When do I want it? What size engine in a car? But it's a much more emotional purchase than, I suppose, a functional one of, I want this sandwich and this drink for my lunch.
But I might disagree a little bit there. I think that we're like, for sure, for the items that you mentioned, the higher ticket items. But if we look at what companies like Shipt in the US, so Target Corporation, they own Shipt. Shipt is like an Instacart competitor. They just enabled the ability for their members to select their own personal shoppers. Now, this is groceries. This is essential items. This is not, we're not talking, we're talking about, milk and eggs and bread. And I think there's something really special about being able to have that almost like personal assistant for the masses. Like, you have somebody who is really catering to your family's needs. And it's for the basic items. I think we see this with like Warby Parker or iBuyDirect is another company. Like, I have had really fantastic experiences, and the ticket items for, on iBuyDirect for a pair of glasses was $35, but they were exceptional in the follow-up. I think it doesn't have to be those high ticket items again. And that's kind of, I think, where I was going with that earlier, is that focusing on that customer experience being phenomenal, no matter where you are, what you're selling, really needs to be the focus. And I still believe that, a human to human connection in that case is the most valuable way to do that.
See, you're way ahead of us with, I don't, maybe the supermarkets here are considering that, but not something that's in place in terms of a personal shopper for my groceries. And it's really interesting because we have a debate in our household, and like everybody else during the pandemic, we did lots more home delivery from the supermarkets, to order online and get it delivered. But things I wouldn't say struggle, but wait in trepidation to see what's been picked.
Right.
Fresh fruit, fresh veg, and meat.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a big issue for a lot of people. A lot of people, because of the situation that we were in, were a little bit more forgiving, or products were just sold out. So it was like, you can't complain about, the state of your broccoli. Yeah. If you just need broccoli, like, you got to make that work. And I think as companies, especially grocery, gets better at facilitating online ordering and grocery delivery, same thing with being in lines when they go back into stores. The threshold for those companies is going to be so much higher, because customers are going to expect them to be able to do better after more time has passed. So I think that's why that example of that personal shopper who, in theory knows you and knows your preferences really well, and you have that confidence in your purchase online, is going to serve Shipt incredibly well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with the whole artificial intelligence and machine learning part, again, some of that you would have thought behind the scenes could be automated. So, I like fruit that's ripe, or I want green bananas, or I want steaks that have no fat on them. So there'll be some nuances, won't there, that again you can relate to a person, but also you can start to learn, and that whole fulfill from store pick piece through the handhelds and the terminals, I think has still got a way to go in terms of some of the data points that can be fed in, because they know it's me, they know what I order, they know what I order historically, they know the things I might send back. So all the data points and history are there. It's the learning the trends and the correlations bit that maybe we'll see in the future. Right.
And I think that, that in conjunction with your labor force feeling empowered, feeling like they have an ownership over the direction of this career that they've chosen, over their client database, helps them become more invested in their jobs too, gives them the opportunity to earn more tips, to really manage their own business instead of just being, somebody who's spoon-fed that data. Make sure you pick up the right thing, drop it off, the whole kind of flywheel there for that person who is really representing your brand. They are the person that your customer is interacting with time and time again. And they are the one who are going to impact whether or not that customer shops with you again. So I think there's a lot of good that can be done there, with the right combination of kind of art and science and, people and technology.
Amazing. So we'll pause on that note. And I've really, really enjoyed this one. As we've talked, you've made me think about lots of things. And actually you just amazed me with that personal assistant shopper for the groceries. It's one of those, again, a bit like the Bike Ninja stuff. It's so simple, but on the other hand, so powerful. So yeah, amazing. Really appreciate you coming on. And if people want to interact with you, find out a bit more about you, talk about and listen to the OmniTalk podcast, where's the best place to find you?
Well, I would say find me on LinkedIn. I'm Anne Mezzinga with OmniTalk. You can find out all of our content. LinkedIn's the most active spot. Otherwise, you can find us at omnitalk.blog or wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube.
Awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Anne. Really, really appreciate
Simon. It. Thank you.
And before you go, last question that everybody gets on the podcast. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
The best bit of business advice I've ever been given, that is, go where your interests are, and you'll always be interested. And that's what we've done with OmniTalk. And, never thought we'd have the platform that we do today. But I can tell you what, Simon, I wake up every day and I'm curious about something. And if you can be too, I think that will be very, very successful in a happy and long career life.
Awesome. And you didn't even have to think about that one, and you weren't prompted either. So good job. Good job. Brilliant. Thanks, Anne.
Thanks so much, Simon. It was so great to talk to you. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Speak
All
soon.
right. Bye.